Hey, all you Arizona lovers. This is the Finding Arizona podcast, episode number 413. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I'm your host, Jose. Today's episode is with Milk by Mom. Tirza, thank you so much for coming in the show. I had a fantastic time talking with you. It was great to get to know someone who is as passionate as you are about your career. It was one of those episodes, I have to say, where it really changed my outlook on a lot of what I do for myself and my own business. I think that having these entrepreneurs come in, share their stories, really does make a highlight for me as the listener, and I hope for you as a listener as well. Each one of these episodes is a special little look into a business that is, has that fundamental passion behind it. So I hope that everyone enjoys everyone who comes in through our doors. And to keep you guys connected, we always throw in links that lead you right into their own website or their own social media, so that you guys can stay connected with them and help them on the goals that we always ask at the end of the episode. So that being said, let's just jump right into a little bit of the businessy end. You can hear every one of our episodes of Finding Arizona Podcast at our website, findingarizonapodcast.com. We make it easy for you guys to stay connected with us through social media. That's Finding Arizona Podcast under everything. And if you want to just be right direct, send us an email. That's findingarizonapodcast@gmail.com. I hope that you guys have been encouraged to stay connected with us, because we've been doing a lot of cool things behind the scenes and sharing it through our social media on Instagram and the other social media platforms. But I hope that you also know that we're parents as well, so that is a big part of our lives. Little guy is just starting out to start enjoying the swimming time. Swimming is a big aspect of what we do with him as far as the safety portion, but also just the fun part of it as well. He is just I would like to say, Aquaman. He loves the water, and he's just now started to get into swimming as a competition. With the Olympics coming down the road, he's been able to see a couple of the meets and just the trials that lead up to the Olympics, and he's been very much enthralled by what you have to do to be a competitive swimmer. His eyes are glued, and he's just like, wow, they swim so fast. And it's just really encouraging to see someone so get started in their career or their journey of like wanting to do something. So we hope to encourage that a little bit more. Other things that are going around, it is hot here in the valley. I hope that everyone is staying hydrated and stay cool during the summer hot months. This is the critical part of what I say, the indoor time, and you have to try and get creative about what you do with your little ones, but also as just adults, we have to stay creative and be motivated, even though it's blistering hot. And I hope that everyone is just making sure that they're taking care of themselves during these critical months. I don't like seeing those unfortunate stories about people overheating and things like that. So I want everyone to know that even though you think you're born here, raised here, and know better, just do your due diligence and just try and make sure that you're staying hydrated at the very least. So that being said, I hope that you guys are encouraged again to stay connected with us social media wise. Make sure that you guys are clicking those subscribe buttons, those like buttons, those follow buttons, and make sure that you let us know who you want in next, because that's what it's all about. And for the community corkboard, just to highlight, we're trying to get this 602 day episode out, which will highlight a lot of individuals throughout the valley about what they believe is great about our wonderful city and the area code 602. We are also in the works with working with Taste of AZ, doing some special things and some special items with them as well. We have a couple of events, or actually social things that we're going to be doing as far as our social media, and that you guys are going to have a fun time seeing us be a family and be kind of this kind of cool, I hate saying influencer family, but it is a wonderful idea to see us really push the envelope on, because it's really what we are, this family that really works and plays hard. And so that is something that I'm very encouraged about. So hopefully you guys will enjoy every single bit of that, and we'll jump right into this episode number 413 with Milk by Mom. I will see you on the next one. Catch you later.
Score big with SeatGeek. Whether it's concerts, sports, or live events, SeatGeek has you covered. Use code FIGHTINGArizona to get a fantastic $20 discount on your SeatGeek tickets. Catch your favorite live events hassle-free with extra savings. Visit SeatGeek.com and make every experience unforgettable.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose, and as always, we bring in fantastic guests every week. Today is no different. I'm I'm so sorry. I should have asked you this before we even started recording. I feel very because I'm always bad with names, but I'm going to make an attempt. Please don't hold me to it. It's Tirza.
Tirza.
Tirza. So
Tirza
close. So
Hova. Yeah,
Tirza
you're close.
Hova.
I appreciate you trying that. Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate you even just being okay with me not asking from the get-go. I'm just so like, I was like, we had a conversation before recording and it was very good. And I love that you were so interested in different things around the valley. But I also want to introduce your business. I want to introduce your Milk Mom. And I just want to say thank you for sharing some of your time and sharing who you are as a mom and as an entrepreneur and someone who's interested in wanting to network and wanting to do fantastic things with everyone in not only Arizona but around the valley as well. And so let's just get into it. I would love for you to introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of your origin story and how this came to be.
Yeah, I would love that. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me, Jose. It's been
Yeah.
I'm excited. So like you said, my name is Tirza Hova, and I am the founder of Milk by Mom. And we are a breast milk freeze drying service available nationwide, but located here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes.
A little bit about myself. I am the fortunate mom of two beautiful little girls, 3 and 1.5, but soon to be 4.
Yes.
And I live here in Phoenix with my husband. We got relocated here around 5 years ago. And, since then our roots are getting deeper and deeper, especially having started a business. And, we really love living here and we feel very fortunate to be here. I would say 10 out of 12 months of the year, right?
Yes, I'm just starting to feel it a little bit
Yeah.
more and more. I don't know if you can too, but it's one of those things where it's like, once you've been here for a couple of years, you can so slowly start to feel and let it creep in. And it's like, oh, the summer months are coming. What to do, what to do.
So I feel like I was starting my business for the last couple of years. And so last year we didn't really leave most of the summer. So this
Yeah.
year that's not happening, even if it's like small little weekend getaways, even if you're just going out to Sedona or Payson or wherever, it's just to break it up. It makes it better. But a little bit about Milk by Mom. So I was I was working in corporate America. I am now a
Okay.
corporate dropout, as we like to call it.
Yes.
And so I was working in the med device industry. I've been there for the better part of the last decade.
Oh, okay.
And I was breastfeeding, pumping, and doing all the things while traveling for work. And I was really looking for a solution to travel with my infant and breast milk for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I came across this solution and I was completely taken aback by the fact that I had never heard of this and the fact that it was like very vetted, right? It's been studied
Yeah.
since the 1950s. Milk banks across the world use it. And I was like, well, how come I didn't know? Right.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
worked with a doula, a lactation consultant. I had my OBGYN pediatrician. So I had a full support team. And so once I realized how much of a game changer this was for me on my trip, I just remember thinking to myself, I've got to find a way to make this more widely available to
Yeah.
moms everywhere, and particularly, starting with the US. And so you fast forward a couple years, here I am with Milk by Mom. We've been around for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and growing and just making an impact in so many families' lives by bringing them freedom and convenience. And so I really love that I have left being in med device, which had a very big mission around helping patients and people
Mhm.
with their lives, but really dedicating myself to a mission I'm strongly passionate about and,
Yeah.
love.
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful. The reason why I asked this question of a lot of the business owners and entrepreneurs is just really because it's a way to reach one of those understanding moments, those critical foundational moments of like whether or not it's something that's been a part of your life always, or if you're like a previous, like we've had people who've had generations who have done it before you, and it's always just kind of integrated yourself as you're going to be the next one to do it. Or it's someone like you and I, where it's like discovery. You're finding yourself through the process and, wanting to use what you've learned and what you think is important to share with the world and share with others about the importance behind it or the importance of your, goals and importance of what you believe in. So thank you for sharing. I think that's really incredible that lack of information is always kind of something that has been highlighted on this podcast is like, there's a critical point of like, oh, a lot of people don't know about this, or oh, there's a need that has to be filled. It can be filled with this, and people are like, oh, I did not know that that was even an option. So for you, what were some of the first beginnings of like learning this process and learning what freeze dry, right? Am I like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
freeze drying milk can do to benefit someone of, motherhood?
Yeah. So I guess I would start with if we just take a look at our society as a
Hmm.
whole, our society is not addressing how do we support breastfeeding moms and how do we support breastfeeding mothers? And breastfeeding is incredibly tough, challenging. And when I talk about breastfeeding, I'm talking about breastfeeding and pumping, right? Because
Yeah.
whether you're doing exclusively breastfeeding, a combination of breastfeeding and pumping, or exclusively pumping, I mean, it is all such a selfless time in any mom's lives. I
Hmm.
mean, there's data out there that shows that, pumping requires as many hours as a full-time job in a year,
Hmm.
to put
Yeah.
that into perspective. And then when we think about, okay, we have a society where like we don't even have mandatory maternity leave. So imagine the
Yeah.
type of support that we provide around breast milk and breastfeeding. And so there is something around wanting to address that need in our society.
Yeah.
And breast milk freeze drying ultimately is there to support parents, right? Because there's all sorts of parents that provide breast milk to their infants. And in particular, like during this time, is to support them in a time when everything else is not really geared to supporting them necessarily, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no way somebody's going to come in and take on the long nights of sleep, right? Or like sleep training, or
Yeah.
somebody who's going to fix your colicky baby, or just understanding how to navigate the new throes of life and the family dynamics that come when you're adding an infant into that.
Yeah.
So our hope is that through breast milk freeze drying, we can at least support and bring a little bit of added flexibility and convenience in a time where that's kind of a hard thing to find all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As a parent myself, I mean, I can remember because he's, coming, we're actually just rounding the corner of potty training. So we're at a
Gosh.
very unique time right now. It's like he's still, got the pull-ups and just for the nights, but it's like, we're reaching the finish line of potty training. And I very like, dude, you're doing it. I'm very proud of you. But again, like you said, no one's there to support you in those moments of critical, like, yeah, no one taught me how to teach him to potty train. We're just kind of going through it and doing the process ourselves. And also those times before where like, he could barely walk, he could barely, communicate with me. And, being the parent that is really spending the most amount of time with him, it was definitely, hard on my, I want to say my patience, but I also want to say it's like just my, how I try and deal with things of like, life balancing being a father, but also trying to help this little one, really blossom and things like that. And I tried asking my mom and my parents And it's a total change of time and what things are capable, because I was just talking to my wife about this not too long ago. It's like they didn't have videos of the baby room. They had maybe audio, but to have like that, like my wife would say this, like if I couldn't watch him like while he's sleep, I'd freak out, like just
Yeah.
not knowing how he's doing. And I was like, yeah, but our parents never had that kind of common thing for them as well. So it's definitely different technologies, different things that they're learning, that each parent group is learning along the way. And so for me, I really relied on a lot of my friends that had kids that are a little bit older, like maybe a year or a couple months older than Atlas, who's is just very helpful, because they would kind of give me insight on what they did with their kids, but also showing me or telling me things that are up and coming to be aware of and be cognizant of. And so I pat myself on the back to be able to ask for help, but I also know that it's not. I just realized, like what you were saying, we don't have that support system a lot in our basic fundamental things of, like, can't ask a doctor really. It's like they don't know your child. They also really don't know what your family dynamics are and things like that. So it's just like you're relying on a lot of like information coming from elsewhere. And so that's
You
just
made a
really,
good point though, Jose. Is that like if you think about it, you're like talking about video camera, right? And
yeah.
so you talk, I don't know, previous generations just use their own sense of hearing. Then you develop cameras and you only had video or audio, and now you have video, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that's a really great way to capture the evolution that happens within any industry and and innovation, right? And that I think is where we're trying to really modernize and innovate in this breastfeeding space.
Yeah.
We say we
Yeah.
want to modernize the way we feed breastfed babies. So you will be able to have, first, oh, they came out with a pump. I remember my mom saying, like, oh my gosh, we didn't have pumps, like, and so I
Yeah.
was like, what? You didn't have a pump? So having a pump, and then all of a sudden being able to have like bottle warmers and just
Yeah.
different areas of that, as you think about the transgression of things, then you add, okay, well, now this is the next kind of evolution around breastfeeding and
Hmm.
providing breast milk. And so this is when you breastfeed or your breast milk, when you freeze dry it, it preserves all the nutrients, the antibodies, and it's good for 3 years. Three
Oh,
years as of the date of freeze dry versus
wow.
6 to 12 months, right? So
Yeah.
it's really kind of amazing. But if you think about it, it's like the next evolution in the space,
Yeah.
which is so amazing. Because as a mom, I discovered it as it being the ultimate hack for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
that was my hack. I was like, this is so amazing. I've got to share this more with more moms because it was such a game changer for me. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I love that analogy that you brought, but I'm going to keep using it. It's like it's
Yeah.
the evolution, right, of the
Absolutely.
space.
I wish and this is how I feel about it from my perspective. I wish I could give more of the story of what Britt had to go through with her breastfeeding, but it's not my story to tell. I'll just say there was some challenges, and as we slowly let go of breast milk and moved more into not being just really move more into like water and milk and the other things. Of course, we really wish we could have done more breast milk, but it's like there's things that, hormones, whatever it may be, it just doesn't allow certain women to continue breastfeeding or being able to produce milk on that level. But I think that having a long-term way of like keeping it maybe very helpful if you can pump early into your right after pregnancy, then hold it up, freeze dry it and have it, stockpiled for a long period of time would have been, if we'd known about it, it would have probably helped us in what our goals were for with Atlas. And, I look back on it and it's, again, a lack of information, but it's like, it's so incredible that, yes, like the evolution, like you're saying, allows us to be more have like again, just the options to have that is just so incredible because we know now with like you said, the science behind, feeding your child your own breast milk is very vital to them in their growth of their brain, growth of their body, growth of all the parts that help humans move into from baby to their toddler phase is just totally critical for that to have that as part of their nutrients and food diet. So
Yeah, breastfeeding can help protect babies against short and long-term illnesses and
yeah,
diseases. I mean, breastfed babies, and there's lots of science to support this, have a lower risk of asthma, obesity, type 1 diabetes, sudden infant death syndrome,
yeah.
is reduced. And so they're also less likely to have ear infections and stomach bugs. But like you said, I think there's something that is so true that breastfeeding and every breastfeeding journey for every mom is different,
Yeah.
right? So in one mom, you could have a big supply, you could have a big stash, and in the other one, like not so much. You're barely being able to keep up with baby's demand. There's all sorts of different variables and factors, whether it's hormones and external variables that influence that can certainly just make every journey so different and so
Mhm.
subjective.
Yeah.
I will say, it sounds like with you and Atlas, like you guys were passionate about providing him with breast milk, which is wonderful.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm definitely a support proponent of, making sure that baby's fed, and that's what's really important. But if you have the opportunity to provide breast milk, and I know of a lot of cases where even if mom can't provide it, there's families that reach out to us often. Do you know anybody that can provide us with donor milk? Because they still really would love to still provide breast milk because it
Yeah.
just has so many wonderful properties.
Yeah. So so this will now lead me into kind of a two-part question for you because we're talking about the evolution of this kind of unique area of, providing this kind of service. Was one My question one was from your own kind of personal history and what you did for a business in the realm that you worked before. Was it helpful to you to understand, how to retrieve and do this kind of work, how the system kind of allows, how that system is going to work for you, retrieving the milk, freezing it, how that like process would work in a business format. Did that previous job help you work this job and turn this business into fruition? And then my second kind of question is about kind of like next steps after you've kind of honed in on the method of doing it per just a family. You looking at trying to help others and starting a network of Milk by Moms service to provide other moms with milk if they're looking for that option.
Yeah, so I'll start with your first question, and the answer to the first one's absolutely. I mean, my background was hugely helpful. As I mentioned, I come from med device, and
Yeah.
so I did product development, very heavily weighted on data
Okay.
research, and so before I even considered trying this myself as a mom with my child, I was like, okay, this sounds almost too good to be true. Like, let
Yeah.
me just
Where's the
check out.
catch?
Yeah, where's the catch? Let me go do some research. Let me see if this is actually like really what they're claiming it all the hype is there. And it was. There's actually a ton of data. And so the data, I really relied and still rely heavily on data to
Mhm.
inform process. And
Okay.
so that it was very helpful, one, in knowing that this was very viable and fully vetted. And then second, yes, being able to read through that to fully understand process, procedure, and so forth. It definitely helped influence the way that we're set up today.
Yeah.
We have a exclusive breast milk facility, right? Where all we
Okay.
do is breast milk. Our machines have never touched anything but breast milk, and there's nothing
Wonderful.
in our facility that we're exclusively dedicated to the processing of breast milk. We have very strict guidelines and standards around sterility and protocols with sanitation. So we want to make sure that as a facility, we are compliant with the CGMP guidelines for
Yeah.
food safety handling.
Yes.
So that's at the core and essence of what we do is really around the safety and quality. But at the end of the day, I don't take it lightly by a second that we are ultimately providing food for infants, right? And so if you
Yeah.
think about who your end consumer is and who's going to be
Yeah.
drinking the milk, like God, you want to make sure that
Everything.
you're crossing every box, you're checking
Yes.
every box. And that's a little bit of what I would say as an industry. There's a few of us in the country doing it. There's still only maybe a handful of 4 or 5 of us, but we do see different ones popping up in different places. And I would just really encourage our listeners today to really do their homework to make sure that they're using a facility and not somebody that's doing it in their garage or in their
Yeah.
kitchen because they can't uphold the same level of sanitation and sterility that we're being able to do at our facility.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen, well, not seen this in particular, but I've seen even food process with like food meals and just the sterility behind that end user of like wanting the best of freshness and just the kind of like what the process is at a facility like that is just like it's incredible to me to have or see something like that go down of like the sterilization, just the overall like the rooms themselves of like, oh my gosh, like how things go in and out, and it's just really interesting of a process for anyone who's like you're looking at a commercial end user of
Yeah.
that facility is going to be top notch. And so I was just that's incredible to I just think in my head I'm like a lot of people in netting and like not hazmat suits but like gloves and stuff like that and just making sure
100%. We use
yeah.
PPE. All our staff does. All our staff is certified food handlers. And so, yeah, we definitely don't take that aspect of it lightly.
Yeah.
What was your second question? We
So,
went off.
well, no, it had to do with just the kind of like a network involving Milk by Mom, and just because you had brought up people wanting the solution of still
Mm,
continuing breastfeeding with the milk, and
mhm.
was that something, or is that something that you're looking to step into? Because it's one part, dealing with families who just, the mom to child, but it's another thing to involve a network now of women who are still lactating to allow the other moms to, use their milk. And I imagine there's a process of all of these things, but, you know, is that something that you guys are starting, or is that something that you're looking to start or jump into that field at all?
Yeah. So, and I love this question. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. Um, we're really focused on building community.
Hmm.
And within that community, sure, if there is a mom who says, hey, I have some donor milk, like, we're happy to post that within our social media and add it into our newsletter and try to find that breast milk a good home.
Yeah.
And my hope is that will continue to grow and evolve as a community so that we have more of that.
Yeah.
I would love that. That would be an end game, right? To be
Yeah.
able to have some sort of place where moms can come and source milk for themselves
Yeah.
if they are having any sort of issues with supply or for whatever reason can't produce.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's definitely in the works. I mean, right now it's very kind of organic. Like if people come up to us or moms come up to us, we're happy to share it with our community and try to
Yeah.
place it. But it isn't currently something that we're like actively doing, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I should have been more specific in my wording. I think it's more like like a food bank, but a milk bank. Yeah, I think that's what they were,
Mm,
the terminology that they're probably using. And just like, starting one, and how does one even continue that forward? I imagine there's one out there, or at least a few out there. But
for sure.
yeah, like that's something that's so interesting because the process that you guys are doing is more of a long-term situation. And how does one, you know, keep track on an Excel spreadsheet and like making sure that the milk is going in and out and all of that stuff is just so interesting to me
It's
because
very documented.
Yeah.
We have a CRM system. I mean, we definitely we rely heavily on technology, and luckily technology's on our side, right? I mean, we're living
Yeah.
in the era of technology, and so there's a lot of different software out there that we can rely on to help us. But to your point, yes, I mean, everything is documented to a T as soon as it arrives. Everything's quality checked, inspected, labeled, and then we also just only work on one mom's milk at a time.
Yeah.
So that from a cross contamination, sterility perspective, and also ensures that mom is going to get back her milk and her milk only.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, there's a checks and balance. Okay, we're pulling this milk. Okay, check it off here. It's just everything is making sure that there's never going to be oversight in that regard.
Yeah.
Um,
That's great.
but luckily we have technology. So
Yeah, that's wonderful.
it's
I
work.
love
It's a
that.
lot of work setting it up, but once, now we have our system. So it's
Yeah.
great.
That's wonderful. I think it's so interesting that you've been able to combine the natural form of just like lactation, breast milk, and now technology into that to help keep it all stay safe and sterile, like you said, and just really, this again is a unique situation for a business, and just the opportunity though is I believe very beautiful one. And so this is where I ask you more about like, kind of the personal side of like, what's the joy that you get out of this, like personally? Like, I love hearing these from the owner itself. It's just like, because this is a very unique place to work. Where's the joy coming in, going day like Monday through Friday, going into the office like this?
Yeah, this is a great question. Actually, I've never had this question. Um, but what comes to mind is I'm doing something that really deeply resonates with my core self and like my core values as a mom.
Yeah.
I love being able to support other moms and other parents. And so that is a very fulfilling day in
Yeah.
and day out. And hearing from families like that have received their milk and their excitement and success around it is really wonderful. One thing with the freeze drying is that it can help if your mom has high lipase, which is an enzyme that can change slightly the taste of frozen breast milk or smell a little funky.
Okay.
And so moms will think like, oh no, my milk's all gone bad, and they'll get rid of it. And it's not, it's perfectly fine, but sometimes baby reject it. And as you can imagine, I mean, you were talking about Brittany and whatever her story may have been, but you see how deeply emotional and like you have this visceral feeling, and imagine
Yeah.
discovering your whole stash and your baby won't drink it. And so when you freeze dry it, it deactivates the enzyme and makes it much milder. And so a lot of babies accept it
Awesome.
after. And so that, I mean, just moms who have thought like, their tears, and then being able to, on the flip side, have their babies start to drink their milk again. I mean, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. So it's just a great feeling. Um, the second thing I love about this is that as Milk by Mom, although we're a small business and getting started, like we have some staff, and I am really proud to have to be an employer within the state, providing young females as well an opportunity. And so it's a women run, women owned business. And
Wonderful.
that's very near and dear to my heart. And then lastly, I think that there's the component of as hard as being an entrepreneur is and as much sacrifice there is when it means, to your point, we were talking prior to kicking off the interview, just being a parent and, when you're working and juggling it all. And that for me has meant missing some very special moments and sacrifice around time with my kids. I
Hmm.
launched Milk by Mom when my youngest daughter was 2 months old, and I used the rest of my maternity leave to do it. And that was very hard, but I knew I had to do it. And the flip side of it is that at this point, like my oldest daughter, like she's like, oh, Milk by Mom. She knows that's mommy's company. And
Yes.
she talked about my brand and she recognizes my logo. Like, we were
Oh,
looking at a
that's so
newspaper and there was like
wonderful.
a clipping. And I think being able to role model to my girls, like what it is to be, a working mom and a hustler and, doing these things and having an impact. And I think that there's those times where you're crying because it's been so hard. But then on the flip side, I know that I'm instilling in them something very valuable.
Absolutely. And that just reminds me, it's like Atlas will go and say, Dada do podcasts? Like, he
No,
knows,
I love that.
he knows what a podcast is. He recognizes our
Yes.
logo as well. And,
Yeah, I
he
love that.
he understands a little bit of like what I do for this and how much time and effort because
Mhm.
I, there's gone probably a handful of days where, because I'm the one who puts him to bed, because that's how it's been the last 3 years of like, I either put him, in my arms and he was falling asleep, or now where I'm reading bedtime stories to him, like Three Little Pigs. And that's just how, I make time for that. And that's something that I always do. But there have been a couple of times where he's like, you go do podcasts now? Like, yeah, work on editing the podcast, or I'm going to go work on the podcast. So you could, okay. And it goes, night night. It's just the
Yeah.
cutest thing. Like, I love that you have this opportunity to not only connect with your child through your thing that you're passionate about, but also helping them understand it's almost like a legacy piece where it's like you can easily
Right?
say,
Yeah, that's what we're
yeah,
trying to do.
yeah, that's where we're all, I hope that's where a lot of us are trying to do, is just hand something down to them that we were so passionate about, that they can hopefully be just as passionate about as
Mhm.
well, and connect with. So I love that. And keeping on the topic of like, the personal side, I'd love to, get a real perspective from the father, the dad and just because I'm a father as well, it's like, what was it like communicating? Because you had brought up, taking the rest of your maternity leave, and this being a passion project of yours. What was that like, communication with him, and like talking to him about wanting to do this, maybe slowly letting go of your job, and what, what are we going to do? Because I can tell you from my perspective. So I met Brittany right like after grad school, and just I was probably just started this podcast. I had a handful of episodes in the bank and already out and produced, and that was a real biz, or she had her own business, but it was a real point of like our relationship when we first started
Mhm.
dating, of like, oh, I love this thing that you do, or I love podcasts, let me help you with it. And I was like, okay. And we went on one of our first dates was, she took photos while I was doing the podcast interview, so that was one of our very first
Love it.
dates.
Oh my gosh. God, these are such great questions, Jose. I gotta say, I've been doing a bunch of podcasts and I love this because it's so introspective. I really haven't thought about that since it happened. But I can say I am so blessed uh, to have my husband. My husband, Craig, has just been so supportive and always like my number one fan.
Absolutely.
And I remember saying, maybe I should start a company, right? The funny story is, I used this, I was like blown away. I was like, this is the ultimate mom hack. And I was telling everybody and I was like showing it. And, I just thought it was the coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
And we're sitting in the pool and we're all drinking White Claws. And I go, I should start a company like this, right? And like, yeah, and we all start brainstorming ideas, and that there was that like the little kind of buzz in the ear, and that kept growing and growing and growing, and I remember telling my husband I want to do this, and he was so supportive, and then we both knew that I was working in corporate America, making like well into six figures and, in a good job. And that would mean leaving that to do this.
Hmm.
And so for us to determine whether or not that was even going to happen, I was like, I have to launch this company, right? I need to launch it. I need to operationalize it and see if it's got legs. And if it does, I'm going to take a leap of faith. And luckily we were in a position where we were able to do that. But I look back and I'm like, my husband's just been really great. Always
Yeah.
been supportive. He's never really pushed back on. I mean, he pushes back on me. He challenges me to think bigger and to think about things, from a different perspective. But in general, It's been great. Although I
Yeah.
have to say he's been very supportive, but it really has just been me creating Milk by Mom. He's got his job and his side projects and all that stuff. So um it has been one of those things where as much as I have that support at home, like starting a company and being an entrepreneur, and you hear this so often, is so lonely
Hmm.
because you're like alone in this island doing this day in and day out. And then you come home and you kind of like, download a little bit and then, off you go. And the kids absorb 90% of
Yeah.
any free time, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I totally agree. Like, because from this side of where I'm standing at, I'm like, it's so interesting that like I always meet these owners. They have sometimes married, sometimes kids. And I always love asking this question because again, it just goes to show you it's like you don't do this alone, especially if you are
Yeah.
married or if you have significant other that one way or another they get involved. Whether it's like you downloading, like you said, to them about all the things that you've done to make this business flourish, or if it's just like them helping you take photos and now becoming your producing partner. It is definitely a non
My partner like that.
yes, exactly.
But
I make this joke like took she's the yin to my yang.
I love it.
In all honesty, I'm the dreamer. I am the kind of,
Mhm.
I help edit and really know all the things that I've learned through the process of actually being the host and being, the guy who started this. But she has taken the reins of like making this side hustle into an actual business. And I could not have done it without her 100%. I say that all the time because she is definitely someone that I very much admired when I first met her because she did have her own business that she was working very hard on at the time. And it intimidated me because I was like, I'm 20 something. I don't even have my own business. I'm working for this other guy. And I'm like, it's so like, one part intimidating because I didn't want to look foolish of like, I don't have anything. I have this little podcast that is just, a side hustle like I sometimes do. And she's like, I love it. Like, talk to me more. And like, I'm interested in you. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, okay. So it's definitely been for us a wonderful like it's been 5 years. Oh, no, it's been
Oh,
more than 5 years. It's been
amazing.
10 almost 10 years of living, breathing, and doing the stuff like this together. And I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been really great for our relationship and who we are as people. And it's just been something that like has snowballed from this little tiny little thing into this very massive, like you can see I'm very proud of like being nominated for best podcasts by
Yay.
magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's like again, we're very humbled but also very proud of what we do here because it's just a life-changing opportunity like you have done for yourself and your family. And so let's pivot a little bit, and I always like to pivot at the end of our conversations to the future and goals and things like that because we are in a conversation that people are listening to, and our listeners love to hear what they can help you achieve maybe this year or maybe your long-term goals. What are those for you and Milk by Mom?
Gosh, we have a lot of
I
goals.
know. I can
I
see the
know.
board behind you. It's filled up with things, and I know it's probably not goals, but
Yeah, I love whiteboarding and kind of mapping things out. It helps my brain.
absolutely.
Um, I'm so excited about our future. We have a lot of things in the works. First and foremost is focusing on our core business, which is Milk by Mom, breast milk freeze drying. I want to really be the breast milk freeze drying company for Phoenix and for Arizona. And I just think it's such an amazing city. I didn't really realize it moving here 5 years ago, but the amount of growth and like just it's so transient. There's so many people from a population standpoint. I mean, it's a huge city, but it's also living and breathing. And I mean, you
Yeah.
can't keep up with the food scene or things to do. So I love that. And I would really want to become, pinnacle within our community to support new families.
Yeah.
We are definitely hoping to continue to grow this year. I said we're available nationwide, including Hawaii and Puerto Rico, but we're exploring some international markets. So
Nice.
hopefully that's going to happen. And I think with that and with any sort of growth and expansion is, growth and expansion within our current facility and so forth. So I'm really excited to I will need right now we're bootstrapped, so I will definitely need to raise money and raise
Yeah.
capital, whether it's crowdsourcing or angel investing or even VC. I don't know. We're starting to look into all that
Yeah.
stuff. So that's really exciting, and I welcome any advice, any suggestions that anybody has. Like, please contact me and let me know because I went to grad school. I was in business marketing and international business, and starting a company and raising money is a whole beast of its own. So I'm
Yes.
just starting to explore that as well. But I'm really excited. I think that there's a lot of things that we have. We have some other additional future plans. But right now, our focus is really doubling down on the local market, continuing to grow our brand, um, and hopefully growth will come with that.
Yeah, I have no doubt that it'll definitely be a continuous journey and something that you are going to flourish in because it seems like you have the joy behind it. You have the level of passion that you put into this. It just flourishes in our conversation, and I know that from that comes the attitude and the determination to want to continue that forward and keep the process going. So I have no doubt that there are going to be good things for you in the future. And with Milk by Mom, I have no doubt that it's going to flourish on its own. And one of the things that I can say is that I know that there are groups out there seeking your help and seeking an opportunity like this. So it'll happen, and with time. And I know from a brand perspective, I think that if I could just give you one piece of advice is again having those stories like you brought up here in our conversation of those moms of needing help and seeking you guys and having an opportunity to maybe capture them and telling their story through an intimate lens, I think would be very beautiful in the sense that you have these families that you're helping on a routine basis of people coming in and seeking what you have to offer. I think that would be great because we see a lot of I don't want to say disingenuous, but just kind of like the non-stories that just are these larger brands that just now have become ambiguous. I would love more of those homegrown stories of, I needed help. They fulfilled this need that I had, and I chose Milk by Mom, and please do so yourself. I think that that's what it comes down to for you guys. So,
Thank you. I will take that advice wholeheartedly. We
yeah.
have a lot of amazing stories. I think that's one of the things I love to take pride in is we're definitely people behind the brand. And so
Yeah.
you're never going to get this like automated, like, auto response. Like we always are going to try to cater and customize to what our families need, whether that's like payment plans or we take HSA, FSA. So just
Oh, awesome.
whatever it may be to make our business a little more affordable or just feasible for families. I do appreciate that. I will
Absolutely.
say, you mentioned what else can our followers do? Like they should follow me on Instagram.
We're
Follow
that
us on
that
Instagram.
leads me
We
right
need the
into the end piece
followers.
here. This is my end piece for every business owner. It is the floor is yours to promote right
Oh, I
now
love it.
and just give everyone your whatever you think would be important, the email, the socials, a physical address if there's one. Also if there's like an event that you guys are going to be at that you want to promote, go ahead and do so. I really appreciate your time. So I'm going to give you the floor and go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jose. This was amazing.
Of
I would
course.
ask our listeners today if they could please follow us on Instagram or Facebook, social, TikTok, all the channels. That would be amazing. We will be at Baby Palooza here. I believe it's June 15th. So that's coming up here next month in Arizona for all our prego mamas or new parents. And then I would just say you don't necessarily need to be pregnant or a new parent for this to be applicable. You could be an aunt, a grandmother, or simply be invited to a baby shower. And a gift card is an awesome kind of new gift for a baby shower gift. So I would just say, think about us as your best friend, your baby shower bestie. But other than that, thank you so much, Jose. And if anybody wants to contact me directly, they can always reach out to Tirza at Milk by Mom. And that is TIRZA at Milk by Mom.
Awesome. Thank you, Tirza. And as always, we end our conversation with our little outro here. You can catch every episode of our podcast at findingarizonapodcast.com. All of our social media handles, Finding Arizona Podcast under everything. And last but not least, the end little piece that we always really end on is kisses, hugs, and belly rubs to our four-legged friends. We will see you next time. Thank you, Tirza, and thank you, Milk by Mom. Catch you later.